Phillips Holmes burst onto the scene in the late silent era and quickly transitioned to starring in the early talkies. But by the mid-30s, he began to move between leading and supporting roles before ultimately ending his career in 1938. Why? Join me as I investigate. Phillips Holmes was born in Michigan in 1907 to stage and future silent film stars Edna Phillips and Taylor Holmes, hence his name. His two younger siblings, Ralph and Madeline, would both also go on to become actors. As a child, Phillips appeared in two of his father's films, Uneasy Money in 1918 and Her Market Value in 1925. Phillips went on to go to college first at Cambridge before transferring to Princeton, where he apparently was spotted by Paramount director Frank Tuttle while he was scouting for locations for his upcoming film, Varsity, a partial talkie. Tuttle gave Phillips a screen test, and he made his official credited debut as Middlebrook in Varsity in 1928, which starred Mary Bryan and Charles Buddy Rogers. The film was a hit, and Paramount decided to cast Phillips in 4 movies in 1929. First, they gave him another part in his feature-length talkie debut, The Wild Party, playing one of star Clara Bow's boyfriends in the movie. The Wild Party was a smash hit. Based on its strength, Paramount finally promoted Phillips to leading man later in 1929, but interestingly enough, his first leading man role was in a late silent. He starred with Jean Arthur and Wallace Beery in Stairs of Sand. After supporting Clive Brook in the return of Sherlock Holmes, Paramount starred Phillips in his first starring talkie vehicle, Pointed Heels, which also starred Fay Wray, Helen Kane, Skeets Gallagher, and William Powell. While Phillips did great work in this picture, he was mostly overshadowed by his more prominent co-stars. Nevertheless, Phillips was off to a great start in the talkies and continued on in 1930. After supporting Gary Cooper and Mary Bryan in Only the Brave, Phillips finally had his biggest role to date, starring with Nancy Carroll in The Devil's Holiday. In a similar role to the one he played in Pointed Heels, he played another rich young man, which would become a niche for Phillips in the early talkies. While he was often typecast in this niche, he played the role very well. Back to The Devil's Holiday, in which he gave a brilliant performance. The film got Nancy and Phillips their best reviews to date. Variety wrote, "It is quite probable that Phillips Holmes will find this picture has cleared his path of bumps. He was entrusted with responsibility, and the confidence was not misplaced." Phillips had finally found his stride in the talkies and starred in 4 more films in 1930, including Her Man with Helen Twelvetrees. This film gave him a chance to mix up his niche a bit and saw him as a singing sailor. The New York Times stated that he carried off top acting honors with his performance in it. 1931 saw even more triumphs for Phillips. He reunited with Nancy Carroll in the fascinating Stolen Heaven, before giving perhaps his most famous role, that of Clyde Griffiths in An American Tragedy. Based on the novel by Theodore Dreiser, and which was based on a real-life case, the film saw Clyde fall in love with poor Roberta, played by Sylvia Sidney, only to be tempted to enter the upper class for a potential match with Sandra, played by Frances D. In a far cry from his spoiled rich boy niche, Phillips was extraordinary in this role and won a Photoplay Acting Award for his performance. He entered 1932, still at Paramount, starring with Marianne Hopkins in Two Kinds of Women, and then reuniting with Nancy Carroll in Broken Lullaby, winning high praise again for his work from the critics. But then, later in 1932, Irving Thalberg convinced Phillips to leave Paramount and come to MGM. Phillips first starred in Night Court with Anita Page and then played a football star in 70,000 Witnesses. Both films did well and were well received by the critics. He then starred with Irene Dunne in The Secret of Madame Blanche, which also appears to have done well. But according to one source, Thalberg became ill in 1933, and with his champion out of commission for the moment, Phillips found himself relegated to mostly supporting roles for the next year at MGM. However, he still gave excellent performances in such films as Men Must Fight and Dinner at 8, which, although he does not have much screen time, was such a monumental film that it secured his legacy as a star by just appearing in it. After a few more supporting turns, Phillips' contract ended at MGM in 1934 and was not renewed. But Phillips was then summoned by Samuel Goldwyn to star opposite his newest star, Anna Sten, in his adaptation of Emile Zola's Nana. After some heavy promotion and an encouraging opening week, Nana turned out to be a flop with both critics and the public alike, sadly, although I find both Phillips and Anna's work in it captivating. It proved to be Phillips's last big vehicle as a star. From 1934 to 1936, Phillips appeared in various supporting roles and a few leading roles at various Hollywood studios. Highlights included $1 Million Ransom, Great Expectations, Chatterbox, and General Spanky. He also went to England, where he starred in a few films there, including 10-Minute Alibi, The Dominant Sex, and finally, 1938's Housemaster, which proved to be his final film. Following its completion, Phillips retired from the screen and went on the stage both in America and in England. In 1941, Phillips and his brother Ralph enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force. Tragically, in 1942, Phillips was killed in a mid-air collision above Ontario. He was just 35 years old. So we are left with the question, why did Phillips Holmes drift in supporting roles and then retire in the late 30s? Well, I think it's a combination of three things that happened between 1933 and 1934. First, Thalberg lured him away from Paramount to MGM, but then became ill, and so was no longer at the studio championing him as a star anymore. To top it off, he was in a car accident with May Clark in 1933, in which he allegedly was driving under the influence, resulting in many injuries to May, from which she never fully recovered. May apparently had to threaten to sue him to get him to assist with her medical expenses, which he did in the end. Although she forgave him and they worked together again for a few more films, the public did not, nor did MGM, resulting in his contract not getting renewed. Then in 1934, he had what he thought was a big comeback in Nana, but since that film was such a notorious flop, many film historians point to it as killing his career along with Anna Sten's. Whatever the case, Phillips' career appears to have been hurt more by scandal than anything else. Even when he moved into supporting work, he still gave fantastic performances. His tragic death cut short what might have been a big post-war comeback for his career. Sadly, we will never know. Nevertheless, Phillips Holmes was one of the finest actors of the late silent and pre-code era. You can find a number of Phillips Holmes' films on YouTube: The Wild Party, Pointed Heels, The Devil's Holiday, Her Man, Confessions of a Coed, Night Court, 70,000 Witnesses, The Secret of Madame Blanche, Nana, and Chatterbox. You can also find the film Housemaster on archive.org. I must thank my sources for this episode: Paste Magazine, Travalanche, Find a Grave, The Chisler, and archive.org for their digitization of motion picture news and variety. Please like and subscribe or follow this account if you want to learn more about the history of silent film stars whose stardom lasted only briefly in the talkies. Up next, join me as I investigate the silent talkie career of Reed Howells. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day.